Please watch in full screen. Maybe our MUGEN Widescreen looks like this, or looks like this, or like this. Now let's dive into different kinds of widescreens in MUGEN. Before that, we need to change two important settings in the MUGEN.cfg. So one is keep aspects, another is stage fit. Let's change both to 1. It means there's no crop on the image and no stretch on the image. So we can see the original stage of all the images. And this is the result when you apply no crop, no stretch. So you can see this is a very typical 4:3 stage. And since MUGEN is come from 4:3, so let's observe this original stage closely. The first thing we notice is the height of the character reach the middle point of the background window. The second thing we notice is our view is limited by these two pillars. So beyond these two pillars, we can only see black bars. Thirdly, we can see those power gauges coming from the character itself. If the character jumps, the character won't go out of the screen, and there's plenty of space up there. And lastly, you can also see the ventilation holes there. And the background image provided by the character displayed correctly. So everything is perfectly normal under this 4:3 narrow screen. Let's change back the stage fit to 0, which is the default value for pure MUGEN, which allow cropping on the image. Let's observe the image once more. So the character relationship with the background stage is not changed. The height of the character still can reach half of the window's height. But for the ventilation holes, you can only see half of them. In the 4:3 stage, you can see full of them. And the character's power gauge cannot be shown because it's under the screen. And most importantly, you still cannot see anything beyond these two pillars, even when you are using 16:9 ratio, which is a widescreen ratio. And quickly, you will find if your character jumps, your character can easily go out of the screen, and they feel too big compared to the screen. So in conclusion, this kind of widescreen actually you can see less compared to 4:3 narrow screen. So let's turn on the stage fit, which doesn't allow cropping, but leave the keep aspect at 0, which allows stretch. Now what you see here is the stretched version based on the 4:3 image. More importantly, you still cannot see anything beyond these two pillars. The good side is nothing is being cropped, so you see exactly the same amount of the information as the 4:3 version. And the downside is, under this kind of a stretched image, a square is not a square anymore, and a circle is not a circle anymore. So I cannot say this is a widescreen. So let's change these two parameters, keep aspect and the stage fit to 1, so we can see the original image size without cropping and stretching. After that, let's load a very typical widescreen stage you can download from the internet and see the results. And the first impression is the stage really got wider, because now you can finally see things beyond the two pillars. And it's not cropped, you can even see the ceiling and the ventilation hole in full. The problem is the character become too big compared to the stages. and the relationship between the stage and the character changed. As you can clearly see, the character's height is reaching the highest point of this background window. And if the character jumps, it can easily go out of the screen. And this is the very typical problem provided by a very typical MUGEN 1.0 era widescreen stage. And the solution provided by MUGEN 1.0 is to shrink down the character. So what you have to do is change the character's MUGEN version to 1.0 or above, and provide this parameter local chord to a additional 427. So the default one is 320, and if you want to shrink it down, you have to go up to 427. So let's do a refresh to let the change take effect. So let's observe the details once again. So now the stage is really widescreen because there's nothing cut, but we can see beyond those two pillars. And the character returned to its original size compared to the stage. And the height of the character is only reaching half of the height of the window. And we can still see the power gauges provided by the character. And now let's talk about the downside of this solution. The first thing we can see is the small portrait cannot fit in the frame anymore. And next, the background image provided by the character cannot cover the whole screen anymore. And lastly, you have to change every character inside your roster. So this Ryu is not changed, it's not shrinked. The Akuma is being shrinked. So if a shrinked character versus a normal character, it will look like this. And lastly, this is the type of stages I've been working on and promoting on my YouTube channel, so I call it true widescreen stages. Let's do our observation again. So firstly, we can see things beyond these two pillars. And we are seeing the ceiling, the ventilation hole in full, so means it's not being cut, it's not being cropped. So the stage is wider screen because we can see more things compared to the 4:3 version. And the character size is just as good as the 4:3 version. The relationship between character size and the stage size is being maintained. As you can see, the character's height is just reaching the half of the background window. And the small portrait of the character is still covered the full size of the frame, because the character is never being modified or shrinked. And the background image provided by the character can still cover the whole screen, but a little bit off if you can tolerate this. So the downside of the true widescreen stages is, firstly, if the character is made for old MUGEN, so the power gauge provided by the character may not able to show. Secondly, this kind of stage only run on MUGEN 1.1. It cannot be run under 1.0 or older MUGEN. Basically, I'm utilizing the zoom feature from 1.1. Firstly, I make the stage looks like this, then zoom out. Then it's become a true widescreen stage. For perfect experience, the character being used on the stage also have to be made for MUGEN 1.1 and utilize the MUGEN 1.1 new feature which can detect the screen ratio. And obviously, if the character can auto-adapt the screen ratio, it will not work on the older MUGEN, but only the 1.1 or later. So subscribe to my channel if you want MUGEN Widescreen related information or patches made the character to adapt the widescreen or widescreen patches for the stages.